Hello, good evening. This is Beth Green, otherwise known as Granny Rocks. And by the way, it's good morning to some of our fans. Last time I talked about should you speak up or take action if you believe someone is hurting themselves or others. And I was really focusing on some of the wrong reasons and how to do it and all of that. And now, tonight, I'm going to be talking about another aspect of it for the 1-2 punch. And I hope you watch this show and you think hard about the things that I'm talking about. But at first, I would like to introduce you to sweet baby James, who's going to introduce our show and say hello to Helen, who said Helen is here. I'm so glad to see you. And Elizabeth said hi, you too. Okay, hi, Elizabeth.
So
we're here.
welcome to
All
Granny Rocks Our World, otherwise known as Growth, where Granny rocks and socks them with wit, wisdom, and uncommon sense. And we air, or air not, we air every Monday and Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, so please continue with us as we journey together. And so for tonight's journey, here's Granny.
Hello. Well, in theory, we had our internet fixed today, but even the guy who fixed it is not so sure that he fixed it. But what can we do? In the meantime, so if I want to talk a little bit, just a kind of a little summary of what I talked about last time, so we're all ready. And some of us didn't watch the show, and those of us who did probably don't remember 90% of it, especially if you're at our age. But anyway, I just want to say that, should you speak up or take action if you believe someone is hurting themselves or others? And that could be personal or it could be political. It could be, a political figure. It could be a boss. It could be somebody important in Hollywood. It could be someone in your family. It could be a friend. It could be you. Anyway, life is, as usual, very complicated. I can never say it's simple. Before we act on our assumptions that we are right, before we talk to somebody about their behavior, we better make sure that we are right. First of all, are we pushing our own opinions? Do we actually have factual information? Are we just pushing the ideas that we grew up with? Are we trying to get back to somebody for something they did to us? Are we listening to rumors, or do we actually know what's going on? And we also have to think about who is the behavior hurting and how much damage it's causing and what will happen if you don't speak up, right? So, but now I said, so supposing the person...
Well, you saw it on social media, so it must be true.
It must be true. And then another thing that's really, is important is that supposing somebody says, but you're hurting me. Oh, you're hurting me. You said this terrible thing to me and you're hurting me. Well, are you, and so I asked the question, well, are you hurting the person by talking to them? Or are you challenging the behavior that is actually hurting them? And is like, if you're drinking and you're hurting yourself or your children or anybody else because of that, if I say something to you, I'm hurting your feelings. No, your behavior may be hurting you and those people. So people will often tell you that you're hurting them just because they don't want to deal with something. So we can't be blackmailed by that. So first, let's check out, see if we're right. If we approach people, we try to approach them sort of like with a question: is it true that you are doing this? Or how is this going? And really try to get the fact, because sometimes we form these real self-righteous opinions when we don't know anything, or we're just imagining or surmising or whatever it is. So then we have to check out our own motives. Bob said hi, Beth and James, and hi, Bob. We have to check out our own motives of why are we bringing this up? Are we bringing this up to prove something about ourselves? And Leona said hi. Hi, Leona. Carol says hi, too. Hi, Carol. Oh, I love it. Our friends are gathering, including some new friends. So check out your motives. Check out your facts. Evaluate the damage or the potential damage. And if you feel clear, take action. Now, that may mean not just speaking, but you may also have to take action. If you know that a child is being abused, you may have to report the family to Child Protective Services, and it's as well as confronting them. So I was talking about that last time, but now I want to look at the other side of that. Let's look at the people who don't speak up. And what could some of their motives be? Or I should say our motives, because well, first of all, we might be convinced that it won't do any good. Okay, I have confronted Uncle Harry on the way he treats his son over and over for the last 25 years, and he just doesn't listen, and the son won't fight back, and what can I do, right? All right, so it happens sometimes. You've brought it up, and you brought it up, and you brought it up, and it's just not doing any good, Amy said, I think sometimes I just want to prove to the other person my superior state of self-awareness. Exactly. Well, that goes back to what might be a bad motive for intervening. But now I'm looking at all the motives for not intervening. So maybe we really are convinced. But even in that case, maybe we have to take action. For example, somebody is dumping toxic waste in the river or in the stream. And we've approached them and we've talked to them and they don't care. Or somebody is dumping washing machines in the creek, which, I mean, we live in a rural area. I've seen stuff like that. Well,
we'll have dogs running around in the park without leashes that could knock people over.
That's right.
Big dogs.
That's right. And sometimes you just have to not only address them, but you may have to go to the authorities. Moni says, hi. Hi, Moni. So glad to see you too. So sometimes, sometimes somebody is blasting noise out, like they're blasting out dynamite and they're frightening everybody and they're possibly a forest fire and you don't want to say anything and you don't want to report them. But what is the possible consequence if you're not saying anything? If they are in fact, defying the ordinances of the law and so on. A second reason that we don't speak up when we don't is that I don't want anyone to get mad at me. No, then they're going to hurt my feelings. I don't want that, right? They're going to get mad at me. So, but sometimes it's more than, I'm afraid they're going to hurt my feelings. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I may lose a position of esteem in the company. Let's say I don't want to confront the popular kids, even though they are bullying some other kids. Like, you know how it was with all those scandals about the sororities and the fraternities. We don't want to say anything. Somebody, you're sitting there thinking, I think there's something wrong with this, but you don't say anything. You don't even let yourself think it because you don't want to antagonize the popular kids who are your social group, right? So, you're going to convince yourself you shouldn't say anything and you should just go along with it. So, especially when you're seeing abuse of new students or gay students or weak kids or people in minorities, sometimes you just don't want to speak up. So, and another thing is not only may we lose, that friendship or being with the popular people, but we could lose love. People who love us. For instance, I may say something on Groove that you don't like. And then you aren't going to love me anymore. And you're going to unfriend me. And that happens, by the way. And then I say, well, I don't want so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so to not follow me anymore. That's way more important than destroying the planet with the pollution, right? And sometimes we just are afraid of conflict because we were brought up that way. Don't speak up. Don't say anything. Be nice.
That's me. I tend to avoid conflict.
That's right.
Yes, I absolutely have to wade in.
That's right. And sometimes that we avoid conflict because we were taught not to. And sometimes we avoid conflict because we got scared as children and we don't want to stick our necks out, right? So, but then I have to ask us, if we give into those kind of fears, how do we feel about ourselves? But that's only if we're honest with ourselves. Unfortunately, too many of us are really not honest. we're going to pretend that we're okay about things we are not really agreeing with. Now, supposing, and sometimes it's that feeling in our gut, maybe there really is something wrong with all this race baiting and all of this hatred that is getting spewed out by people and this division. Maybe there is something wrong with that, but we don't want to know that because that might put us on the outs with our friends or something. Okay, so we don't even know that that's
or
what
challenge our illusion that things are fine.
Oh yeah,
Everything's
that's right.
fine.
You want to think, that's right. Now, there's a whole other side to this that I want to bring up now, which is even more irritating to people that I bring this up. Supposing I don't want to say anything to you about your behavior because I want to do the same thing.
Ooh. Yeah.
I see you hurting somebody, I want to hurt them too. Now that runs rife in our society. We are in the same political party. We're in the same social group. We have the same gender identification or whatever it is. And then there's somebody who's saying something that we think is wrong or hurtful. Well, maybe we want to say those things too. Maybe we like to get mad and be abusive to other people. Maybe we have that inside us also. So I'm not going to say anything to them.
I might add that when I was in college,
yes,
the kids had a phrase, "I've been butting that person around." And then I didn't object because I thought, well, gee, it seems like there's a culture here of people saying, well, I got to butt that person around. Or I got to butt that person. It's kind of
butting them around is
like
pushing them around or hurting them.
hassling them or making them silly.
So that's
putting them through
very
unnecessary
good.
stuff.
Exactly. Now I'm going to give you an example or several examples of how we might want to do the same hurtful behaviors, not only to others but to ourselves. Let's say you and I are both taking heroin, which we are not, but supposing we were. And maybe we're dealing a little bit too, just to, get enough money to use. Well, I'm not going to turn you in because we're doing the same thing.
Right.
Or even if I stop using, I may not want to turn you in because I may need you again in the future if I decide to start using again. Or let's take another example. We both drive race cars. It's dangerous. And you have a baby. So I go to you and I say, George, maybe it's time for you to, stop doing this. This is very scary. I mean, have you considered what could happen? Blah, 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 blah. So, but I feel uncomfortable saying this because I also want to race. So how, it looks hypocritical for me to say, well, you maybe shouldn't be racing, but I want to continue. Or maybe you and I are both doing drag racing through town, getting screwed up, drinking, and we think we are the cream, the top, and we think it's funny. So I'm not going to say anything to you about your behavior because I want to do it too. I mean, I think it's so funny and fun to go out there and scare the shit out of people, especially old people who are trying to cross the road or dogs or something like that. Okay. Now, supposing friends of yours make negative statements about people of other races, genders, gender identification, religions, national origins, or even political parties. For example, you don't want to call them on it. You pretend that these statements are not prejudicial. No, that wasn't prejudice. They didn't say. No, let's say my friend Mindy says all men are liars. Well, and you say, all men are liars. Or you let her say something like that. That's hurtful to a class of people who happen to be men. And are they? Are all men liars?
No.
Maybe most.
We like to think we're first-class citizens, not second-class.
First-class liars. Okay. Larby says, hello, dear Beth and James. How are you, baby? We're good. We're good. Okay, Larby is practicing his English by listening to me. I love that. Or supposing George claims that Muslims are all terrorists, and they're trying to get us, whoever us is. Well, do I want to say anything to George, or do I want to believe the same thing? Am I willing to actually examine the evidence, or do I just want to go along with George because George is my friend and I want to get in on that same energy? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, it's so bonding
To be self-righteous.
to be self-righteous, and
put
it's
other people down.
exactly, it is so bonding to be hateful. So I don't want to say anything about your hurtful behavior because I want to do the same thing. Now, supposing I admit that my friend is actually prejudiced against gays or women or anybody, and I have that same desire to say those things, do I have to look at my beliefs?
Yep.
Am I willing to do that?
You should be.
Well, should and will are not the same. Especially in the world we live in today where people are so polarized and there are so many hateful and hurtful things that are said on all sides about everybody. We have to really look at this question deeply and thoroughly. So many of us are really good people, and we wouldn't behave that way ourselves, but we will allow things to be said that should be confronted, but we don't want to be out of the group. So sometimes it's right not to speak, but a lot of times we're just trying to protect our connections, or in this case, we're trying to justify our own hateful or prejudiced behavior. And we're always going to be looking for somebody to justify it for us. So whether or not to speak up when someone is saying or doing something hurtful to themselves or others has turned out to be quite a complicated discussion, hasn't it, James?
Mm-hmm.
And as always, it turns back on ourselves. There is no simple answer. We always have to look within with that laser view, with that searing light that goes into our very being and our souls. Many of us belong to religions that preach doing unto others what we would have them do unto us, that preach kindness, gentleness, love, forgiveness. What you do unto the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Many of us belong to these religions, and yet we see that people with these beliefs do not have a real connection between what they believe and what they're doing in our world today out of their own fear or prejudice. I say all of us have a lot of soul searching to do. All of us. People on all sides are saying hateful things about people on all the other sides. And it's hurtful. It's hurtful to them because it hurts their souls. It's hurtful to the people that they're putting down. Hate crimes have been skyrocketing in the last 2 years. Skyrocketing. There's a reason for that. Let us not get caught in this energy. Whatever we typically do, whether we typically speak up without thinking and just show ourselves to be superior, or whether we tend to shrink and don't say anything and allow others to do the dirty work, or we join in with the crowd. Whichever is our habit, we have to look at the reason that we are doing these things. Nothing is simple. And we need to make sure that we are making conscious choices that support the highest good of all. And on that challenging note, I want to remind you to come back Monday and Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time to join us, and to come back tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific time, and I will play the piano for you and hopefully bring some peace into our hearts so that we can become the loving people that we like to think we are, or that we hope we can become. And I want to thank everybody who commented and all the likes and loves we've already received. Please share this program, even if it makes you unpopular, right? That is a way of speaking up. And now James and I are going to conclude with the last verse of the song Love is What's Worth Fighting For, which is our theme song.
Love is what's worth fighting for. Destinies unfolding. Now we're listening to our hearts. We will change the world from the inside out.
Please take it to heart what I've said and try not to just dismiss it. Love to you all until tomorrow night or Monday or whenever.
Bye for now.
Bye.